It's time for our next Q&A session with Marcelo Medeiros returning as moderator. Joining him are this afternoon's panelists, Lia Gouveia, Rebecca DaSilva, Joao Korngold, and Peter Hayes, ready to answer all of your questions. Marcelo, welcome.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And thank you again for coming back. We had a lot of questions, especially about mediumship. We'll do our best to try to answer all the questions, but in case we cannot do that, I already apologize again for that. But so let's start with one here for you, Joao. André Luiz mentioned that in the future, there will be a mechanism to connect incarnated and disincarnated. What is your opinion about broadening this connection? And in case one day we do have this connection, like people connecting incarnate and discarnate all the time, what will be the role of the medium, or will we still have a medium?
Kardec says we are all mediums, right? In Spiritism, we use the term ostensive medium to differentiate all of us who are inspired, who are guided by spirits, but we don't produce the mediumistic phenomena. But as we are all mediums, this is going to continue evolving and developing, right? So the more we evolve, the better we'll be able to connect with the spiritual world. So I see one day that the mediumship that we have here will be a direct connection with the spiritual world, and we will no longer need to have special ostensive mediums, because we will all be mediums in the sense of this ability to connect with the spiritual world. But we are far away from that. Still, we need to evolve a lot.
So just connecting this thought to this other question, if the role of the medium will be different in a world of regeneration?
Initially, no. I still see we doing the work we are doing. And again, if you think about mediumship meeting according to Spiritism, we have very few. In a world of 8 billion people, we have, 1,000 people that work in mediumship meeting, 10,000 people, it's nothing, right? So first, we are going to have more of mediumship meetings throughout the world. And eventually, when we go to a world of regeneration, this will be part of the beginning of the world of regeneration. By the end of it, maybe it'll be different, but I don't see much of a change, just an evolution, better mediumship meetings.
Thank you. And Peter, you talk about all of us being medium and the difference between being an ostensive medium. So if a person thinks he or she is an ostensive medium and wants to develop that, what's the first step to do? What does this person need to do in order to develop this mediumship?
If there's a Spiritist center in your area, that person can certainly go to the Spiritist center and start to learn Spiritism. But the more one can study Spiritism in general, whether you do it online, it's even better, of course, to do it in person at a Spiritist center. But learn the basics of Spiritism, understand the general points it's making, and of course you can study mediumship in that process. But it's important fundamentally to know the basics of Spiritism. For instance, people who come to our center or any center and they are interested in mediumistic meetings, okay, but in order for someone to participate in a mediumistic meeting, you need to be familiar with the foundation of Spiritism. You probably need to spend easily a year at a center, quite possibly longer. In Brazil, it's much longer than that, as I understand it. So you need to be conversant with the basics of Spiritism And that becomes a vehicle for moral improvement and self-knowledge, which then allows you to understand how to navigate mediumship.
Thank you. Now let's go back a little bit to the first panel. Leah, do you think that mindfulness can help us to know ourselves and distinct which thoughts are ours and which one is coming from the spirit around us?
Absolutely. It's part of this self-knowledge, self-awareness. And then if we get to know ourselves, then it's easy to identify what comes from me and what comes from the outside, right? So if, let's say I normally have positive thoughts and suddenly I start having negative thoughts, I can easily identify that it does not come from me, right? So it's why it's so important to get to know yourself. And we need to understand that we are spiritual beings, so we are in constantly connection with the spiritual world. And talking about mediumship, knowing that we are all mediums in some degree, we are always in contact with them. Therefore, by affinity, we connect with different levels of spirits. So we cannot blame spirits when we, oh, I'm undergoing our obsession here. I open the channel, and by affinity, I attracted these spirits, which many times they are just old friends, you know, trying to have fun with us because they miss us, because they love us, you know. So it's up to us to invite them to follow a different path, right? And it's very, very important to get to know ourselves. And if I can add just another comment about the future of mediumship, I think it's going to be much more intuitive. And as we evolve and we are more in contact with the spiritual world, you know, our communication will be really mind to mind, you know, through prayer, through meditation, during our sleep time. So, but like John said, we are very far from this reality.
Thank you. And Rebecca, now one question for you is still talking about know thyself. This person sent this question to connecting two topics that we have in the Spirit's book, questions 909 and 919. They say here, the connection between, if you could talk a little bit about the connection between knowing yourself and our effort to change the things that we need to in order to develop our own consciousness. How can we connect this? Knowing thyself and having this willing to change what we need to.
First, we have to think about will as our engine. That is what is going to produce all our actions. So once we get in the right headspace, genuinely just mindfulness and sitting with yourself, you can take the steps to further plan things out. Through a plan, you can actually achieve your goals. So science has shown that multiple times. So little small habits that you instill in your day, ranging from like day-to-day interactions with people, all the way from long-term goals that you hope to achieve one day as a spiritist, but never forgetting that the will that you have is already inside of you. You just have to activate it. Be strong like you are, you know.
João, back to you about, again, about the education and mediumship. Can a medium learn all that they need to learn just by communicating with the spirit, or do they need to have theoretical mediumship training?
They need to study. Study, study, study. Discipline, discipline, discipline. You cannot safely work with your mediumship if you do not educate yourself. Everything in life is education, right? Kardec was an educator first and foremost. So for you to practice mediumship safely, you need to study, and study hard. Understand about how the communications work, how you yourself work as a medium, your sensations, your feelings, differentiating what's from yourself, what's from the spirits, to prevent or reduce animism, which is the communication from the medium itself. So, there is no shortcuts in mediumship. You have to study. And just a side note here. I know that there are some people out there doing mediumship meetings online. I don't think that's safe at all. I think it's very, very dangerous. But there are people doing that.
And we have another question. I think it's connected, of course, with study and education. So if either you or Peter could answer this one. Actually, it's a real situation here that the person sent to us. How to deal with the following situation. A medium is not being able to control the communication from a specific spirit during a mediumistic meeting. It causes pain and personal issues. The spirit is not willing to receive help, and the medium is suffering. And the person asks that the medium does not have experience.
I think, well, Joao, we can maybe both answer. I think Joao touched on the essential point that it's important that a person study a great deal. And it's also what Rebecca was just saying about knowing oneself. Generally speaking, interferences by spirits, if a medium is having an ongoing presence, it's usually because we've created an opening within ourselves that are allowing interference to occur. So it's easy to say this, I understand, but the more we work on understanding who we are, and the more we engage in regular study, repeated study, then the more we can begin to create a fortification around us. It's also a very good idea among the books of Spiritism to read the Gospel according to Spiritism all the time, because you start to improve the company around you. Sometimes the more we work on ourselves, the more we work on the environment around us without necessarily consciously trying to do it.
And just on what the medium is feeling, during the communication, is very normal that the medium will feel what the spirit is feeling. That's one of the characteristics of a medium, right? So the spirit is feeling pain somewhere, the medium can feel the same pain. The problem is when the spirit leaves, the medium continues feeling, it continues to be unbalanced. Then the medium needs to educate itself to learn how to control and to detach itself from the spirit that is communicating. But during the communication, it's normal. The medium is going to feel the feelings of the spirit.
I'd like to add to that in a mediumistic meeting, you need to have pass givers. Sometimes mediums need a pass. I should mention, however, that even though it's fine to give a medium a pass, if they need one to facilitate disconnecting from the spirit, and give the medium the pass. They do have to be careful not to turn that into a crutch in which becomes a regular habit. They always need a pass in order to feel better. But as Joao said, it's better not to let somebody go home after a mediumistic meeting if they still feel some kind of a connection from the spirit.
Now we have a more philosophical question for Leah and Rebecca. Is consciousness an element of the spirit, or is it the spirit itself?
So we see on the Spiritist literature that consciousness is really our thoughts, and we know this comes from the spirit, but it's not the spirit itself, but it is an attribute of the spirit, if I can say that, because as we evolve, we are going to evolve spiritually, but evolving also our thought process, right? And we have discussed today different ways to use these tools to help us go the way up. But just before passing to Rebecca, I just want to add one comment about mediumship here, which is mediumship with Jesus, meaning free of charge, with humility, right? Especially, and if our spirit center or group do not have the right conditions to have a mediumistic meeting, don't have it. It's better to just doing studies, and when the conditions are ready, then you can start having mediumistic meetings in person. You need to have, someone conducting these meetings. You need to have ostensive mediums, but also need to have, like he was mentioning, people that are going to support this with passes, with the vibrations, so humility to recognize that we are not ready to have a mediumistic meeting in our centers yet. But it does not mean we are not spiritists. We can keep studying, we can keep improving ourselves. And when the right conditions arrive, then we can have our mediumistic meetings. Sorry, Rebecca, please.
No problem, no problem. Jumping back to that consciousness, I like to think of it exactly how it was stated earlier as that moral compass. It is a part of God. It is what is truly what we are meant to be. I kind of see it like as a lot of light inside of a big like boulder. Like more experiences you go, like it'll just go hammering at it, experience after experience. Light will go shining until you fully develop that consciousness. So I think it is not part of the spirit itself, but it's ingrained in it from God.
If I just may add a little bit, we all learned that God, the creator of everything and everyone, it is inside of us like a tiny seed, just waiting for time and the right conditions to grow. And as we grow spiritually and we become more aware of everything, we raise consciousness, we are going to approach more and more to God, our creator, and immersed on this love, on this wave of thoughts that we are all interconnected, even though we do not feel yet.
So now I'll open the question to the four of you. We have one more question about this meeting. Is the moral conduct of the person who dialogue more important than the one of the medium? For example, the discarnate may not hear the one who is dialoguing if they feel that the person who is talking doesn't have enough moral conduct.
Well, we are all imperfect spirits, right? The communicating spirits, they sometimes they know our limitations and they use our limitations to attack us. But the role of the dialoguer is to focus on the spirit that is communicating. We are not there to discuss the personal problems of the dialoguer. We are there to help and assist the spirit. So a dialoguer that has some experience will learn that you move away from discussing about yourself and you go back to the spirit, and it's just humility. You don't need to argue with the spirit. You just say, I'm an imperfect spirit. I know my limitations, but we are here to try to deal with your problems, your situation, to find a way to help you. We're not talking about me here, but sometimes there are a lot of spirits that are much smarter than us. So we have to go through a different route, a different approach.
And can it also help in a few cases the spirit to connect with the dialoguer? For example, if they see they're struggling, they have the same problems, for example, it can help to have this connection and for them to accept the help.
I think Andrea mentioned right when when you are talking to the spirit and you are looking at yourself and you are saying something that you know you yourself is not able to do it yet, right? That requires humility. But again, the role there is to help and assist the spirit. So it is important to find a way to reach the spirit, and there is not there is not a rule book for that. It's learning, understanding, using the gospel, which is as Peter say, a wonderful instrument, but it comes with experience. It comes with knowing who you are and what are your abilities and your shortcomings.
And we have a question here about the language, as we have, for example, many people whose English is not first language working here in the US with Spiritism, in the Spiritist, in mediumistic meetings. Is language a barrier for mediumship communication for those who are in another country? Does it change anything on the way they talk to the spirits and the way the spirits are open to receive this help?
Language doesn't have to be a barrier. It depends on the comfort level of the individual. I work with people whose language, their first language is not English, but they speak well enough that when they give passivities, for instance, they can generally communicate sufficiently. Sometimes there may be a medium who doesn't feel comfortable enough doing that, so you need to respect that as well. So it really depends on the medium.
And we have to understand that we have the assistance of the spiritual benefactors, the directors of the meeting. So ideally, the meeting should be in the language of the country, right? If it's here in the US, should be in English, unless it's in Miami, that can be in Spanish, right? So why? Because most spirits here speak English, and we learn in Spiritism that we communicate through thought, but we're not there yet. And the spirits that are communicating, suffering spirits, they need to listen. So we need to speak in our language. And if we do it in Portuguese, I know there are many centers that do it in Portuguese, you are only able to receive spirits that speak Portuguese. And, it's work, it helps, it's important, it's better than not having it. But, we live in this country, we should try to do everything as much as possible in the language of the country. But I always tell people when they do the gospel at home, even if they do by themselves, I ask them to do in English, because then you can attract more spirits to be helped and assisted on your gospel at home. If you do your gospel in Portuguese, only the ones that understand Portuguese will come. And there are many more that understand English here in this country so far.
And I think one last question that we have: how to minimize and mitigate the risk of fascination amongst the medium, especially for newly formed groups?
The best way to minimize fascination is emotional honesty. The mediums need to have the humility to understand the difference between when ideas are coming from someone else versus them. They, again, need to study. And in post-discussion meetings of mediumistic groups, if there is a feeling that maybe fascination is taking root within a mediumistic meeting, they need to be able to talk about that. One general point is that it's always important to have humility when doing any kind of mediumistic work. So if we need to listen to what other people are telling us, we have to be open to that.
That's important. Many times people fear to talk about that or even to bring up the topic of fascination, but you need to be open and to have confidence in it.
Well, it's like what Joao was saying about counseling. If a spirit manages to challenge us, you can acknowledge, yes, we too have our faults. We cannot be afraid to admit when we have flaws, because we all have them.
Thank you so much. Thank you again, João Korngold, Rebecca DaSilva, Peter Hayes, and Via Gouveia for the panels and this talk.